own this place now," he crowed, striding up onto the long communal bench like he was ascending a throne made of IKEA and ambition. Except he wasn't unveiling a product. He pointed at me, loud enough to make the room drop into that hollow hush you only hear right before a thunderclap. "Claire, you're terminated, effective immediately." The office froze. A barista mid-pour held the milk like a white flag. Someone's Fitbit buzzed and then died of embarrassment. He was Rowan Hale, freshly coiffed and minted, the sort of man whose LinkedIn looked like a press release. He smirked like he'd won a prize from managerial theater. People laughed in that thin way people laugh when they're trying not to look like witnesses. I didn't flinch. I didn't beg. I reached into my tote, pulled out the slim metal drive I'd carried for a dozen years, the one stamped with the little vendor stickers nobody reads anymore, and set it on the table like a check placed on a poker table. "Good luck," I said. Rowan's grin widened. He thought it was a punchline. He thought he'd shown everyone who ran the place. What he didn't know, what no one in that break room had the faintest clue about, was that the drive wasn't just a backup of holiday photos and expense reports. It was a ledger, an access log, a small, stubborn archive of everything that kept the company breathing. Contracts, vendor keys, notarized transfer codes, encrypted manifest, and the kind of legal knotwork you only get when you've been the quiet person who signs things other people refuse to read. It was all on there, and it had my name stitched through it like a spine. Real talk, if you're listening to this and you haven't hit that like button yet, come on, help the channel. You want to see what happens next, right? Smash subscribe because the good stuff is ahead, and because accountability tastes better when it's fresh. But anyway, back to the circus. Rowan had been parachuted in 3 months ago when the founder, a man who'd built the company out of a garage and a stubborn refusal to wear suits, decided to take some time. They called Rowan an interim CEO. Everyone called him a headline. He reorganized org charts like he was playing speed chess, dubbed it optimization, and started a purge. People who had been here through literal winters, hardware freezes, product launches over pizza, that one all-hands where the servers fried and we held a candlelit debugging session, were shuffled out by Slack memo and stage-managed theatrics. I wasn't the first. I wasn't even the second. I was the one who knew where the wires crossed, the one who kept the emergency contacts in a binder under the PR box of branded pens. They needed a symbol, someone with tenure, someone people whispered about in the kitchen. So Rowan made a show of it. He dragged me onto the bench like a contestant on some corporate talent show and snapped my access away like a trophy. I walked out past the receptionist who'd known me since my first day and whose daughter I'd taught to code, past interns steeped in optimism, past the poster in the stairwell that said, "Disrupt the grind" in Helvetica. I didn't go straight home. I sat in my car and turned the drive over in my palm. It felt heavier than metal. It felt like authority you can't just rebrand away. 11 years of being the person who stayed up while others slept, who wrestled with billing portals at 2 a.m., who called the HVAC vendor at midnight when the server room started mimicking a popcorn machine. 11 years of saying yes until my vocal cords begged for mercy. 11 years of signatures and receipts and being quietly written into the company's DNA. Back at my apartment, I opened the battered utility drawer, pulled out a navy binder labeled Access, Custodian, Claire Bennett, and marker I'd written the week they moved into the now infamous headquarters. Inside was a map of responsibility, the name of the data center ops person in Tulsa, the hardware token serials for the biometric locks, the notarized backup custody agreement, and a timeline of vendor approvals. It was boring, bureaucratic, beautiful. It was proof. I didn't smash anything. I didn't leak. I didn't go viral. I did what the job demanded. I started doing the one thing no one notices until it's gone. I called the right people and said 3 words. I'm no longer authorized. That sentence is a scalpel in this world. It severs assumptions. It clips permits. It throws sand in the gears. First call, Marisol at Meridian Hosting. She answered like we were old colleagues. Claire? Oh, God, do you have a minute? I told her I wasn't in a position to authorize emergency overrides anymore. A pause. But you're still the on-file custodian, she whispered. Our compliance mirror hasn't seen the update. Click. Her silence had teeth. Second call. Dax at Keyloop, the vendor that handled badge issuance and biometric enrollment. Claire, he said, breath like server room air. We tried re-enrolling new cardio tokens. The system expects a custodial rekey from you. I told him the truth. that the custodial rekey needed someone with sign-off authority, and that my name was still lodged like a splinter in the system. No hysteria, no drama, just procedure. Systems are gullible. They assume continuity. When continuity disappears, they do what they were designed to do. Fail-safe. And fail-safes are almost always inconvenient. By the next morning, Rowan swiped his badge at the lobby turnstile and got a repeated, accusatory buzz. He tried again. He swiped harder, like the card owed him loyalty. The reader laughed at him. Employees queued behind him, their shoes clicking on tile. Someone murmured, maybe the afternoon shift didn't update. An older receptionist who'd worked through 3 board members shrugged and said, maybe talk to Claire. Rowan went pale like skim milk. He barked something at security. Security blinked and called IT. IT, bless their patient hearts, had been on a diet of quick fixes and duct tape scripts since the company grew faster than its documentation. The head of IT, a saint named Priya, answered Rowan with the calm of someone used to holding back digital chaos with a coffee mug. We can't provision emergency custodial overrides without the master custodial token. The token is registered to Claire Bennett. We need transfer paperwork, a hard transfer. Rowan tossed the phrase transfer paperwork like it would materialize. By noon, half the office was stranded like pigeons outside a locked bakery, checking phones and refreshing calendars. Finance couldn't release payments because the ACH signing authority was tied to my custodial credentials. Procurement couldn't accept deliveries because the vendor portal rejected change requests without a verified signatory. A widget manufacturer in Ohio emailed to say the shipment would be held until the compliance contact updated. Rowan replied, just send the parts. Like typing could undo bureaucracy. It cascaded. It was the bureaucratic equivalent of dominoes arranged on a drafty table. Contract stalled. A prospective $150 million partnership with Helix Systems, a negotiation we'd been courting since the previous quarter, hit a compliance snag when their counsel saw my name still on the federal vendor forms. They pinged me. I answered, professionally, I have been terminated. I cannot authorize or verify current custody. The reply was clinical. Until custody is clarified, we are pausing proceedings. No drama, no screaming headlines, just pause, the corporate anesthetic. Rowan's grandstanding became a lesson in humility. He called emergency meetings and brought in lawyers and tried to backdate forms like a kid trying to change his homework after the teacher has already graded it. The federal portals flagged the patchwork submissions. They smelled retroactive filings and raised a red flag that stuck like gum on a shoe. I sat across town at a coffee shop called Juniper and Bean, watching the panic thread scroll across an industry chat channel from a burner account I never deleted. I sipped a coffee that wasn't great and thought about how invisible labor is the most powerful kind. It only becomes visible when it stops. I called the right people and said 3 words. I'm no longer authorized. That sentence is a scalpel in this world. It severs assumptions, it clips permits, it throws sand in the gears. First call, Marisol at Meridian Hosting. She answered like we were old colleagues. Claire? Oh God, do you have a minute? I told her I wasn't in a position to authorize emergency overrides anymore. A pause. But you're still the on-file custodian, she whispered. Our compliance mirror hasn't seen the update. Click. Her silence had teeth. Second call, Dax at Keyloop, the vendor that handled badge issuance and biometric enrollment. Dax? Claire? He said, breath like server mom air. We tried re-enrolling new cardio tokens. The system expects a custodial rekey from you. I told him the truth, that the custodial rekey needed someone with sign-off authority and that my name was still lodged like a splinter in the system. No hysteria, no drama, just procedure. Systems are gullible. They assume continuity. When continuity disappears, they do what they were designed to do. Fail-safe, and fail-safes are almost always inconvenient. By the next morning, Rowan swiped his badge at the lobby turnstile and got a repeated accusatory buzz. He tried again. He swiped harder like the card owed him loyalty. The reader laughed at him. Employees queued behind him, their shoes clicking on tile. Someone murmured, maybe the afternoon shift didn't update. An older receptionist who'd worked through 3 board members shrugged and said, maybe talk to Claire. Rowan went pale like skim milk. He barked something at security. Security blinked and called IT. IT, bless their patient hearts, had been on a diet of quick fixes and duct tape scripts since the company grew faster than its documentation. The head of IT, a saint named Priya, answered Rowan with the calm of someone used to holding back digital chaos with a coffee mug. We can't provision emergency custodial overrides without the master custodial token. The token is registered to Claire Bennett. We need transfer paperwork, a hard transfer. Rowan tossed the phrase transfer paperwork like it would materialize. By noon, half the office was stranded like pigeons outside a locked bakery, checking phones and refreshing calendars. Finance couldn't release payments because the ACH signing authority was tied to my custodial credentials. Procurement couldn't accept deliveries because the vendor portal rejected change requests without a verified signatory. A widget manufacturer in Ohio emailed to say the shipment would be held until the compliance contact updated. Rowan replied, just send the parts, like typing could undo bureaucracy. It cascaded. It was the bureaucratic equivalent of novenos arranged on a drafty table. Contract stalled. A prospective $150 million partnership with Helix Systems, a negotiation we'd been courting since the previous quarter, had a compliance snag when their counsel saw my name still on the federal vendor forms. They pinged me. I answered professionally, I have been terminated. I cannot authorize or verify current custody. The reply was clinical. Until custody is clarified, we are pausing proceedings. No drama, no screaming headlines, just pause. The corporate anesthetic. Rowan's grandstanding became a lesson in humility. He called emergency meetings and brought in lawyers and tried to backdate forms like a kid trying to change his homework after the teacher has already graded it. The federal portals flagged the patchwork submissions. They smelled retroactive filings and raised a red flag that stuck like gum on a shoe. I sat across town at a coffee shop called Juniper and Bean, watching the panic thread scrolled across an industry chat channel from a burner account I never deleted. I sipped a coffee that wasn't great and thought about how invisible labor is the most powerful kind. It only becomes visible when it stops. I called the right people and said 3 words. I'm no longer authorized. This sentence is a scalpel in this world. It severs assumptions, it clips permits, it throws sand in the gears.
3 days after Rowan's little theater act, the company resembled a startup after a power outage. Screens glowing, but no one home. Emails bounced, service queued in limbo, and procurement tickets piled like driftwood. The morning headlines called it a temporary administrative misalignment. Inside, it was panic in slow motion. Rowan's glossy confidence cracked. His trademark navy suit looked heavier each hour, like it was absorbing the failure. He tried to call in favors, IT consultants, compliance freelancers, even a government contact, but every single route ended with one phrase: we can't proceed without the original custodian. My name, my signature, my authority. The irony? I didn't even need to lift a finger. The system was doing the revenge for me, flawlessly, mercilessly, procedurally. I spent those days quietly consulting for my new firm, sipping coffee while the chaos streamed in digital whispers through my old Slack back door. Someone had screenshotted the message board. Guys, payroll failed again. Legal says they need Claire's revalidation key. Another read, Rowan just yelled at finance. He thinks the servers are haunted. No, not haunted, just properly documented. The compliance department tried to replicate my digital signatures using an old script. The system rejected it, labeling it fraudulent. Rowan demanded to know why. Priya, ever calm, replied, because the custodian's encryption key changes with each physical authorization. Without her biometric token, the system assumes intrusion. He stared at her like she spoke in code, which, technically, she had. The board stepped in on day 4, holding an emergency virtual meeting that was supposed to restore confidence. It lasted 19 minutes before the CFO, a man with a perpetual tension in his jaw, asked the inevitable question: who exactly authorized the custodial transition? Silence. Then, one by one, they all realized no one had. Rowan had fired me publicly, theatrically, but not officially. The termination paperwork hadn't been processed through the digital HR system because, you guessed it, I was the only authorized processor for executive terminations. Legally, I still existed inside the company as an active custodian. On paper, he'd fired a ghost. The board called me that evening. They didn't apologize, they rationalized. We just need your assistance to bring systems back online. I listened, polite and distant. Of course, I said. I'll need a formal reinstatement letter and a temporary consultant agreement. Liability clauses. They sent it within the hour. I signed, digitally, securely, legally binding. And with that one click, I wasn't just a fired employee. I was now a paid consultant with full control to audit, repair, and, as fate would allow, reveal. The first thing I did was pull up the audit logs. Every deletion attempt, every retroactive entry, every forged timestamp, all traced back to Rowan's admin profile. He had been trying to hide transactions linked to offshore vendors that had never delivered a single part. The payments matched a shell company tied to his college roommate. It wasn't just incompetence, it was theft. Clean, quiet, and almost beautiful in its arrogance. I compiled the data, encrypted it, and sent a tidy, professional report to the board's legal counsel. No drama, just evidence. The next morning, Rowan walked into the office, chest puffed like the storm hadn't reached him yet. Cameras from a visiting news crew, there for a product demo that would never happen, caught the moment two board members met him in the lobby. No shouting, no spectacle. Just a whisper, a hand on his shoulder, and the walk toward the elevators that everyone in corporate life recognizes as the exit march. By noon, his access was revoked, his name scrubbed from the internal directory, and a new memo circulated. Effective immediately, operations will undergo internal restructuring under the guidance of compliance consultant Claire Bennett. I didn't smile when I read it. Revenge wasn't the point anymore. Justice was quieter than I expected, almost polite. My inbox filled with old coworkers sending private messages. You saved us. He had it coming. You taught us how systems remember. That night, I sat by my window, city lights blinking like servers in sleep mode, and realized the truth. Power isn't loud. It doesn't need applause or vengeance. It just needs good documentation. Still, I kept the drive in my desk drawer, not as leverage, but as a reminder. Every empire falls the same way, not with an explosion, but with a forgotten password.
Darwin's downfall hit the press within 48 hours. Tech CEO under investigation for data mismanagement, the headline read, sterile words for something far messier. Inside the company, it was chaos disguised as productivity. The PR team spun phrases like internal realignment, while the board quietly erased his fingerprints from every system he touched. I was in the middle of it all, not as a savior, not even as a hero, just the person who knew how the bones of the place fit together. My new title, Senior Compliance Consultant. Interim, Operations Oversight. Translation, the woman they fired to look strong was now the only one keeping the lights on. The first day back, I walked through the same glass doors where Rowan had humiliated me. The air felt different, quieter, cautious. People who once avoided eye contact now nodded, respectful, grateful, a little afraid. Not because I had power, but because I'd proven I understood how it worked. The IT floor was a battlefield of open laptops and caffeine. Priya met me with a tired smile. You broke the company just enough to fix it, she said. I laughed. No, Rowan did. I just stopped holding it together for him. We got to work. Step 1, rebuild access hierarchies. Every admin key had been duplicated under fake credentials, a mess Rowan left to maintain control. I reversed it methodically, line by line. Step 2, reauthorize compliance custody. It felt poetic to watch my name slide back into the system where it belonged. Step 3, investigate. The shell companies went deeper than we thought. Payments routed through consulting firms that never existed. Invoices authorized with fake tax IDs. Each one tied neatly to accounts under Rowan's oversight. I built a digital trail so airtight even his lawyer couldn't slip a clause through it. When the board summoned me for a private meeting, I expected corporate formalities, gratitude wrapped in legal jargon. Instead, the chairwoman leaned forward, fingers steepled. Claire, she said, we've reviewed your findings. You've uncovered not just misconduct, but systemic negligence. We want you to take over operations permanently. I didn't answer right away. The offer was power, real power, but also a warning. The same system that had once chewed me up was offering me the driver's seat. I thought of the long nights fixing payroll bugs while executives congratulated themselves on vision. I thought of Rowan's smirk when he fired me. And I thought of every invisible worker still inside this building who'd been told to stay quiet for the good of the company. I'll accept, I said finally, but on one condition, transparency. No hidden accounts, no vanity titles, no silent firings. The chairwoman hesitated, then nodded. Agreed. The next week, I called an all-hands meeting. Not in the conference room where Rowan had staged his performance. I chose the loading dock, the same place we'd once unpacked servers by hand during the early days. I stood in a crate and said, we're rebuilding, not for optics, not for investors, but for everyone who's still here. No rehearsed lines, no PR, just truth. People clapped, some even cried. For the first time in years, the company felt like something human again. That night when the building emptied and the servers hummed their low lullaby, I sat in my office staring at the same USB that had started everything. I plugged it in one last time, not to destroy, but to archive. The logs, the memos, the backups, all compressed into a single encrypted vault labeled Rowan Hale Audit Final. I uploaded a copy to the board's legal servers and deleted the local version. Clean, done, finished. Then I poured myself a glass of wine and opened the company's website. Beneath the header, where once there had been a stock photo of Rowan shaking hands, there was now a single line of text I'd written myself. Integrity isn't what you say when people watch. It's what survives when they stop. I smiled. Revenge had never been my goal. But justice? Justice, when written in code and policy, lasts longer than any headline. 6 months passed. The company, Virion Systems, was no longer bleeding, no longer gasping under the weight of its own ego. The wounds Rowan left had turned into scar tissue, strong, visible, and impossible to ignore. We'd rebuilt the infrastructure from the ground up, replacing vanity with logic, chaos with clarity. Investors returned, cautiously at first, then confidently, when they saw that numbers were stable and press releases no longer read like apologies. My days were long but clean. Every process had transparency built in: automated reports, dual authentication for all financial actions, open communication channels. No more dark corners, no more hidden doors. People trusted the system again, and more surprisingly, they trusted me. But success carries echoes. Rowan's shadow lingered like an unpatched line of code. The investigation he'd triggered was still ongoing, and even though he'd vanished from the public eye, I knew better than to believe he was gone. People like him never disappear. They just rebrand. And then one Monday morning, I got the email. It came from an encrypted address. No name, just a subject line: "You think you won." Inside, a single attachment: a screenshot of the old financial dashboard with my name circled in red. A threat disguised as proof. I stared at it, heart steady. I'd expected this. I forwarded it straight to legal and the cybersecurity team. Then, just for myself, I opened the archive I'd kept. Rowan_Hale audit final. Every file was still there. Every timestamp aligned. Every signature verified. Whatever game he thought he was playing, I'd already won before he'd even hit send. That afternoon, Priya came into my office, face pale but calm. She asked, "You saw the leak?" I nodded. "Yeah, classic deflection. He's trying to rewrite the story." She sat, folded her hands. "The board wants to go public with the findings. Name names." I looked at her. "Including mine?" She shook her head. "No, they want you to deliver the statement." For a moment, the room felt smaller. The same woman who had once been publicly fired was now being asked to stand on a stage, the same stage, and speak for the company that had watched her humiliation in silence. The next day, the auditorium filled again. Employees, press, cameras, even the same LED screen where Rowan had once played judge and executioner. I stepped up to the podium, notes in hand but heart unshaken. 6 months ago, this company faced a failure of integrity, not just technical, but human. Systems don't break by accident. They break because people forget that accountability isn't optional. The crowd was still. Cameras clicked. Today, we close that chapter. The truth has been documented, verified, and secured. And for the record, truth leaves better fingerprints than lies. I clicked the remote. Behind me, the screen lit up. Audit trails, financial maps, the full picture of what really happened. No dramatics, just data. Hard, irrefutable data. The reporter scribbled. The employees exhaled. Justice wasn't theatrical this time. It was procedural, predictable, perfect. When it was over, I walked off stage to quiet applause. No spotlights, no victory speeches, just closure. Outside, the air was cold, the city humming with the indifference of survival. I stood for a moment on the sidewalk, watching traffic blur into neon lines. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Nice speech. You learned well." No signature, but I didn't need one. Rowan, still out there, still watching, still bitter that I'd turned his arrogance into my armor. I smiled, slipped the phone into my coat pocket, and started walking. Not away, forward. Because revenge ends. But legacy is maintenance. Every day you keep the system honest. Every day you make sure the next Rowan never gets the keys again. Winter arrived quietly, the kind of season that slows even the city's pulse. 6 months had turned into nearly a year since the firing, since the day a man mistook cruelty for control. The company was alive again, humming with efficiency and purpose. I'd rebuilt more than the systems. I'd rebuilt trust. People no longer whispered when I passed. They asked questions, shared ideas, fixed things before they broke. Burion Systems wasn't a tech firm anymore. It was a reminder that transparency could be an ecosystem, not a slogan. But survival has its price. Late nights had become routine again, not out of fear, but duty. I'd find myself in my glass office at midnight, city lights spilling across my desk, the servers below singing their low metallic lullaby. And sometimes, when the hum dipped low enough, I swore I could still hear Rowan's voice, that sneer disguised as charm echoing through memory. "You're just an employee, Claire, replaceable." The words didn't sting anymore. They motivated. Every audit I completed, every report I published, every ethical clause I pushed through the board was a quiet rebuttal. Then one cold evening, the security dashboard pinged, an access attempt from a restricted subnet. Legacy credentials. I opened the log and froze. The user tag read r.hale_admin. For a moment, it felt like the past had reached through the wires to tap me on the shoulder. He was trying to get in, again. But he'd forgotten something vital. I'd built the system now. I traced the IP to an offshore VPN. I didn't panic. I opened the command console, typed a line I'd written months ago, a failsafe, and hit execute. Within seconds, his access vanished.
Then, as a courtesy, I sent the trace files straight to the federal investigator still handling his case. Revenge wasn't the goal, but accountability? That was the habit now. 2 weeks later, I got the call. Rowan Hale had been arrested at a co-working space in Singapore, caught using falsified access credentials tied to stolen corporate data. The story broke globally within hours. Disgraced CEO caught in international cyber fraud. The irony was surgical. He tried to rebuild the same empire he once destroyed, only this time without the one thing that made it work: integrity. The world finally saw him for what he was: noise. The next morning, I walked through the office to find a quiet energy in the air. Not celebration, not gossip, just collective closure. Someone had brought coffee for everyone. Someone else had left a small note on my desk. You turn the breach into a blueprint. I smiled, folded it carefully, and tucked it into the front of my old Navy binder, the same one that had started everything. That evening, I packed up, shut off the monitors, and walked to the balcony overlooking the skyline. Snow had started to fall, slow, deliberate, silent. I thought about how far it had all come: a public firing, a quiet reckoning, a company resurrected. And as the snow gathered on the railing, I realized something simple. Revenge is loud, but redemption is quiet. It doesn't demand attention, it just lasts. I took out the final copy of the USB, the one I had kept sealed in my drawer, and placed it in a padded envelope. I addressed it to the company's archives with a single note inside. For record keeping, Custodian Claire Bennett. No drama, no grand farewell, just procedure. The same discipline that had once been used against me, now serving me. When I left the building for the last time that night, I didn't look back. The glass tower behind me wasn't a monument to revenge anymore. It was proof that systems fail, people fall, but documentation never forgets. And somewhere in that silent snowfall, as the city lights flickered on, I understood what true victory felt like. Not applause, not headlines, just peace. And a clean audit log.